Ready to record?
You're good.
Good to go. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We want to talk about some things that we've learned over the years on how to prevent sewer backups. And I'm going to go over an overview of how the trust has been performing today and talk about some things we've learned from our members over the years. We appreciate your help in teaching us some things we can learn about that and things that we can share. And so there's some good things that come from that. And hopefully today you can all learn from that and take something out that's going to help prevent backups in tough situations in your sewer systems. So here at the trust, we have 124 trust members who own and operate a sewer system. Like I mentioned, we collect information each year from those, and we work with you to identify some best practices, and then we can share those out. So one of the ways that we do that is we have an annual sewer management survey that we send out. And here's a picture of what that looks like. Those of you on this webinar today might have seen this before. You might have been involved in filling that out and sending it back. And we use this information to find what the trends are, to find what people are doing out there, and then we can share that out with a report that we send out each year. And so I wanted to go over a little overview of how that's been working and some things that stand out that we can learn from. So we received 120 surveys this year, and we got some results that we've shared. We look at trends and we looked at comparisons to see, what are people doing? How often are they cleaning their systems? What does their inspection program look like? What plans do they have in place? Those are things that we look for. And so with that, we send out a little report, which we call a sewer survey report card, which identifies your loss performance for the last 5 years, and it compares it with the averages at the trust. And you can use that to see how you stack up against the average, to see how your system is performing in comparison to others. So this is an example of what that loss performance report looks like. And this just has the trust information on it. But you'll see on the left-hand side, there's the averages. You'll see the trust averages, and then where it says your performance below that column is where yours would be. But in this case, we're just looking at the overall trust performance today. And if any of you did not receive this, or if you'd like to receive another copy of this, you can reach out to me. We can get another copy sent out to you. You can email me at brent@utahtrust.gov, and I can help you with that information. But just to make you aware of what we're seeing at the trust, we look at how many miles of pipe are out there on average, how many connections on average, and then some of the key things that we look at is how is your sewer cleaning frequency? And we recommend that to be less than 3 years. And you'll see the average of the trust this last 5 years, this last year was 3.39 years to clean on average. And then the other thing we look at, which is also critical, which is our #1 best practice, is our manhole inspection, making sure that we're inspecting all manholes every year, 100%. And it looks like the average was about 2.63 years to inspect all manholes. So that's been coming down in recent years. It's been improving, but we want to continue to focus on those two things as they're really critical to prevent backups. So we're going to go over those some more today as well and talk about those things. Other things we look for in the survey and in the reports is, do you have an SSMP, which we'll talk about? Do you have a fog program? And other things that might be out there that help you with those inspections and cleanings. And so we'll look at that today. And then on the right-hand side of this report, you see the trust averages, average claim costs, and we break it down into some rates where we have claim cost per mile of pipe and also per connection. And you can use that to compare and see how you're performing. So again, over the years, we've learned a lot of things. We've shared those out, and it's been really helpful that way. Looking at the claims here at the trust, over the past 10 years or so, we've seen the claims come down. We've had a good trend, and you can see the angle of that graph there. This is the number of sewer claims per year at the trust. And 2018, you'll see we had a spike there. A lot of that may have been contributed to the high snowfall we had that year, and a lot of water melting off and overflowing some systems with the runoff of water. But even in the last couple of years, we've been coming down even more. So we're seeing some good positive things, and we want to share that and just congratulate everybody for doing a great job and helping to keep those numbers down. We appreciate the knowledge and information you share with us on that. So we want to look at some trends. We want to look at what's been happening, some things over the last few years, some things that stand out that cause backups, and things that we want to learn from. Okay, and some of you may have countered some of these issues before. Maybe there's something that stands out or you want to learn from it today to try to find out what's happening and how to prevent these sewer backup issues. So I'm going to give you an overview of those. Some of the things I've seen recently are flushable wipes. There's been people putting those down their lines. Sometimes they get caught in the lateral, sometimes they get out into the main line and cause a backup, and that's been an issue. We'll talk about how to prevent those, but a lot of that is awareness to homeowners of what they're putting down the drains. We've had some that are blocked by foreign objects, some blocked by grease. We've had some lift station failures, construction damage, and roots that infiltrate that don't get cleared and cleaned out that end up causing backups over time. Here's some specific examples from claims that we had recently. One, we had gravel that had got down into a manhole and got into the main line and backed up the sewer that way, and possibly from a contractor or another person working in the area where that happened. We had a 2x4 that was found in the sewer line. Obviously some debris and construction debris can get in there. Rags from homeowners, lateral line blockages, and sometimes the lateral line was not connected. There's been cases where it had become disconnected over time, things had shifted or it was damaged. And I've even heard of one case where the lateral was not connected to begin with to the main line. So those are things that we can learn from, some specifics that have caused backups over recent years. So we want to look at the root causes. With any type of accident, we want to know what is really causing these trends, what's causing the problems. And here's some of the things that stand out. Old systems that have older lines that are breaking down that need to be replaced, connections coming loose, lack of inspections, roots and grease that build up and cause blockages that way, and actions by the public. And the reason we want to look at these root causes is then we can make some corrections and we can learn how to prevent the issue. So with any type of an issue, we want to find what the root cause is. Any type of accident or backup or issue, we want to find out why it's really happening. And that's what the real root cause is. What really caused that to happen? And then what are the corrective actions that we can take to prevent these backups? And then we can make a plan of how to manage our system better to make sure we're doing the things we need to manage it and avoid those backups and those incidents. So we're going to talk about that today, things that we've learned. So what can you do to prevent backups in your system? I love this picture. I think it's hilarious. But you never know what can get in your sewer system. We want to learn to prevent foreign objects or even animals or other things that could back things up. So we're going to look at those best practices now of what we can do to prevent backups. And the number one thing, like I mentioned, is manhole inspections. You've got to know your system. And in order to know your system, you have to take a look. And that's really one of the best practices. We've talked to members over the years that have talked about this with us, and they've implemented a manhole inspection program, and they have told us that they've found things and issues in their system just from popping the lid and taking a look. They've prevented some serious backups and things that would have been a really big backup had they not popped that lid and taken a look in there. So the number one thing is that we recommend inspecting all manholes every year. That is by far the number one best practice that we can recommend. And part of that is knowing what to look for. So we have a manhole inspection manual that we've put together over the years, and this came from help from several of our trust members who we appreciate your help and guidance on that. They've provided information and pictures and talked about ways to do this, to document those kind of things that can be really helpful. And if you need a copy of this, we can also send that out with our webinar recording email today. We'll send out a copy of that with it. But you need to know what to look for. What are the conditions? Check and make sure that everything's flowing properly. There's definitions in there, and then the best practices of how to actually do the manhole inspection. So here's an example of that. There's a section on collar conditions and cone conditions to see, what is acceptable and what is not. There's a satisfactory rating, or if they're a low, medium, or high priority, you can rate those things and know when it's time to repair or replace damaged parts of your system. There's trough conditions, there's infiltration, and it goes into detail of what makes up each of those, whether they're low, medium, or high priority. One of the best things you can do is document your inspections, and there's actually an inspection sheet in there that is an example of how you can document those and make sure that you're rating things, that you're prioritizing things, and you can document what each manhole had for a problem there. So you have to know your system in order to prevent backups and know what's going on and fully manage it. You got to know what's out there. And part of that is mapping and locating all the equipment. So having good maps up to date, have your system maps in place, and know where your manholes are. Sometimes these things get covered up or lost. I've heard of some being found out in agricultural fields and places that have been covered up before. So knowing where they are is part of that, and mapping those things out. You want to identify all your sections, know where they go, record the locations, the pipe sizes. You want to have a good understanding of where those are to be able to manage them and prevent backups that way. So after you know your system, you need to make a plan. And the state has guidance on this from the Utah Department of Environmental Quality. And they have a template for a sewer system management plan. And this is your SSMP. And this is something that should be in place for every organization which authorizes you to operate or own a sewer system. And so there's been some requirements in place for several years as far as having one of these in place. If you don't have one, and I know there's a few trust members that do, we recommend that you get on that and get your notice of intent in and make sure that you get your plan in place. There is a template available on their website, which is really simple to use. It outlines all the main parts of the SSMP, and you can fill in your information and make that part of your program there. It has things such as sewer overflow requirements, reporting requirements if there is an overflow, operations and maintenance plan, and actions that you would take if there is an overflow, sanitary sewer overflow there. So you can go to the website. This is an example of where it is on Utah Department of Environmental Quality, their website. And there's lots of guidance. You'll find the template there. You'll also find the legislation on it, and any other resources are there as well that you can refer to. But we do recommend getting that in place and having that because it helps to make sure you have a good solid plan for managing your sewer system. And another part of having a plan is having a good backup response so that you know that if there is a backup, if there's an issue, maybe there's a homeowner calling and they're in a panic, you know how to handle it. You know what steps to take, what equipment you're going to need to get, things that you're going to need to have in place, who you're going to call to help. Having all of that in place and having a plan can really help alleviate a lot of problems. It can prevent it from becoming worse and possibly having a worse situation with the backup. So that is part of your plan, is having a plan for backup response. So what do you do if it backs up? Well, you want to take quick action. You want to find out what's going on, get after it, correct the problem, make sure that your system can get fixed and flowing again. And you can assist those that are affected. So when it comes to assisting the public, when it comes with working with residents, there are some things you should do and there's some things that maybe you don't want to do. One of the things you could do and definitely recommend is be courteous and be helpful. You can provide information about what typically may cause a backup. But one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to admit fault, because sometimes we just don't know who's at fault. We don't know what's caused that backup until we really take the time to find out what's going on, find that root cause. So we don't recommend admitting fault, but you can provide general information. You can explain to them that most common causes of backups are caused by sometimes issue with the lateral line, which is on the owner's responsibility. You could talk about who owns the lateral and who manages the main line of the system, and just provide general information about that. And you can even provide information on a card or some type of a printout that you can give to them to help them to know what to do. But in this situation, you may have a resident that's really upset. They could be, frustrated. They've got a backup in their basement, or a tough situation. But being courteous and being professional, giving them general information is a great thing to do. But again, don't go and admit fault and tell them that it's the city's fault until we find out, really what happened there. So part of your response plan could be having those contact numbers in place, knowing who to call if you need help clearing or getting equipment out there. Have those numbers in place. Have a good response time. Have programs in place for that. Have your equipment ready to go. And then again, some type of information card that you can give to residents if there is an issue, who they would call, and possible recommendations for helping them out there. But part of that is having a plan. So knowing your system and then having a plan can help prevent backups and from making them worse. The next part we want to talk about is maintaining your system. This is your cleanings. And we recommend cleaning sewer lines, cleaning your whole system at least every 2 to 3 years. No more than 3 years is our recommendation. And we recommend you have a schedule for that. Some people will do their whole system every year. Some people break it out into thirds of a system, and they'll, 1/3 of the system will get cleaned each year, and they'll have a schedule for that. And some will even manage their schedule so that they're hitting those hot spots, those problem areas where things need to be cleaned and checked and inspected more often. So having a schedule and knowing your system can help that, and scheduling the cleanings will prevent the backups. So when it comes to cleanings, there's a couple ways to do it, and we have this as part of our survey. The question is, who is doing your cleanings? About 50% are doing it themselves. So the agency has their own equipment, and they have their vac trucks, and they have everything they need to do that, and they do it themselves on a schedule. And about another 50% is contracting it out. There's several contractors around the state. For this, we recommend you use preferred providers that are reputable, that are doing a great job. I know most of you are using some of the same ones, same contractors for this, but definitely schedule it out, plan ahead, and budget for it so you can keep your cleanings and inspections going there to maintain your system. Another part of maintaining your system is the cameras, having a TV and videoing your lines. One of the best ways to know what's in there is to video and see. You can see if there's roots, you can see if there's grease buildup, see if there's any blockages or if there's any new hot spots that have come up in your system. You can learn from those, but have that on a schedule so that you can video and camera those lines and know what's in there. There's also other technologies out there that I know a lot of you have heard of, such as for acoustic inspections and other equipment like that. And those are also another way that you can learn about how your system's doing. We recommend you stick with your SSMP, that you continue your cleanings and your inspections. And if you use other technologies, those can definitely augment and help you with that. But there's lots of things you can do to maintain your system, and there's other ways to look at it as well. So again, when it comes to cameras, we recommend no more than every 3 years to video your lines. Look at those areas that are most important, the most effective areas, mapping and tracking all those things that you need to know where it's time to schedule those and identify those problem areas. That's one way you can do it to manage that. And this is not necessarily the best way I would recommend managing your hotspots. You want to know what's in there, but you don't want to be putting your head down in there. But it is important to know, where are those problem areas? Where are the places you've had backups in the past, or where has there been blockages? Maybe there's bellies in the lines, maybe there's corners that turn, maybe there's things that have had an issue over the past. You want to know where they are, and you want to mitigate those problems so that you don't have a backup. So stay on those, schedule those. Those are areas you're going to want to have a higher frequency of inspection and camera down the lines on those. Another thing to watch for in maintaining your system is managing fog. And what this is, it's fats, oils, and grease. And there's a program that you can have for that. As you can see here in the picture, grease can really build up and cause some blockages there. So managing that can help your system to not have those issues. So you can adopt a program. And part of that program could be requiring restaurants that have high amounts of grease, or commercial areas that have things that they're putting down the lines, having a program that can have those grease traps and those grease interceptors in place to capture all of that fats, oils, and grease before it gets into your system. And those can be cleaned out and maintained, and you can have a program around that about where it's required and the requirements for cleanouts and managing fats, oil, and grease in your system. You want to keep things from becoming solidified and building up and causing backups, and so that's one way that you can do that as well. And a lot of our trust members have that as well. They already have a fog program in place. So that is something that you could look at. And there's also more information on that on the Department of Environmental Quality's website as well on how to do those. So when it comes to sewer system management, we recommend having trained system operators. They know what to look for. They know how to rank things as far as priorities when they're doing their inspections. They know what could be a problem, what's more urgent. They know how to check for the adequate capacities to make sure things are flowing, and doing the frequent inspections. Those are some of the key things to maintain and manage your system. So when it comes to managing sewer, there's some action plans. There's things that we need to do. It's addressing those problem areas. It could be purchasing new equipment and making sure that we have a budget for those. And it could be communicating with our public so that they know what causes backups and things that should and shouldn't go down the drain. So reminders to homeowners are a really good thing that a city or an entity or district could do to help out with that. When it comes to communicating with the public, what can you do? Well, there's newsletters you could send out. Sometimes these have gone out with utility billing letters and bills. They can go out with that. So you could send a newsletter to the community. You could send out flyers. You could put it on your website. There's ways to get that information out there, even online on your website. So have some quick information with an explanation of what causes those backups, so they are aware, what can be in the lateral line and what can't be, what's allowed, what shouldn't be in there. And then some general safety information of how to maintain their line, and then a discussion on the ownership and responsibility for who maintains that lateral line, and that's not necessarily the city or the district's responsibility. So communication is big, talking about, some of the backups that we've had. We've seen backups with wipes, we've seen debris, we've seen broken lateral lines, and communicating those things that cause that to the public can help prevent those. Documentation is one of the best things we can do as well, and it's really important that we do that with all of our inspections, using those forms or having some type of a tracking system or online system that keeps track of when those inspections were done and what the current status is in those manholes. We also want to document any repairs whenever we do cleanings. We want to document those. If there's any updates to policies and procedures, or if there's a complaint, an issue called in when we have responded, we want to document the dates and the actions that we took to prevent and help those situations. When it comes to documentation, this can really help from making the losses worse, because you can always go back and learn from it, and you can show what you did in response to those issues. Just as a general reminder, if it isn't written down, it never happened, and that really helps to be a reminder on that. So always document what you do with the whole system. You want to do your best to avoid the losses and from making them worse. So we want to be able to prove that we are managing it effectively, that we're doing what we need to do, that we're reasonable and prudent, we're acting in our best interest to do the best we can, we're inspecting, we're cleaning, we're doing our cameras, we're doing the best practices to maintain the system. But we have to be able to prove that sometimes. And that's what documentation can really do, is show that you're doing your due diligence on that. So those are some of the key things we want to watch for in a sewer system. And we have just a summary sheet here of all of the things that go into the best practices, just to kind of overview what we've talked about, what the best practices are and the things that we've learned over the years. So number one, we have to know our system. We have to know what's out there, know how things are. Do our annual manhole inspections. So every manhole every year. That's the number one best practice that we have. Map and locate your equipment. So keeping your system maps up to date, knowing where things are. Those are critical things to know your system. Okay. When you know it, and you know how your system's doing, you know the challenges you face, you know what may cause backups or problem areas, then you make a plan, and you can have your plan in place of how to manage that system effectively. And again, part of that is having a SSMP in place, your sewer management plan. Build it so that it's specific to your system, so that it meets the needs that you have, that it's effective, and it manages and prevents backups. Part of having a plan is also having an effective backup response plan, knowing what to do, having that equipment, having things in place, and knowing how to handle a backup. That can help from it becoming worse. And then maintaining your system. So you know your system, you have a plan, and then you maintain it with the cleanings, making sure you have a good schedule, that you clean and camera on the schedule so you know how your system's doing. Managing your hotspots and mitigating the hotspots if there's issues, and managing and controlling the fats, oil, and grease. Those are some of the top things that you can do to prevent a backup. And then lastly, train and certify your operators. Make sure that everybody has the training and knowledge that they need to be able to manage that system effectively. Those are the best practices, and some of the things that we've learned that are the best things to do. And we encourage you to share those and learn from those. So any questions you're seeing out there yet, Jason?
I don't have any questions in yet, but folks, if you've got any questions, please type those into your chat box and we'll answer those at this time. Great information there, Brent. Lots of material covered. I know we've got many people that are experts in the field on here, and just my thought on that was, talk to those people that have done this, and have, they've put an SSMP in place and they've done various different things. So, but yeah, go ahead, folks, and type those into your chat box. I was thinking about your reasonable and prudent thing. Why is it so important to be reasonable and prudent? Well, if we're going to try to defend you in a claim, you need to be able to show, or we need to be able to prove that you've been reasonable and prudent. and kind of the standard on that is 1 year. If you've cleaned that section of pipe in the last year, in most cases we can deny a claim unless you've been really negligent in that, and that's a pretty high standard for a lot of organizations. And so we realize that's really expensive to do that once a year. So all of these other things come together. All right, have a question? Will this be available to watch later? Yeah, we're recording this session. We'll place it up on our YouTube channel later today. And once again, subscribe to the channel, and then you'll see all this stuff. I'm looking for anything else. Doug, did you have anything to add or ask Brent?
No, I think you made a really good point there about being able to defend the claims that occur. Often things happen that you have no control over, especially where, a contractor or somebody, pushes something into the manhole that you don't know about, and that works its way down the system. And so there are, these incidents that we call no fault incidents, but we would rather that be a no fault than something that we are at fault for. And again, your defense is how good your management is, how good your management plan is. And like Jason said, generally a year, if you've serviced that line within the last year, then that's a pretty good defense for us. But there's also, design and construction of the system, that we have to look at and make sure that's right. I would really recommend, given some of the incidents that we see involving construction debris that makes its way into the sewer systems, that it'd be a really good idea that in areas of your sewer systems where there's a lot of construction going on, new developments and things like that, to go out there and inspect those frequently, because often there'll be debris, pushed into those manholes out there where there's not really any flow or very much flow going through there yet. But then once those new houses start to come online, then the flow increases, and sometimes we see problems as that construction debris gets pushed on down through the system. So I think it's a really good idea to just get out there, check those contractors, make sure the manhole covers are on, and because sometimes those get open, and check those. We do see a lot of problems coming from that. And on the SSMP also, I would just point out it's been 5 or 6 years now since that requirement came into place, and we're starting to see some plaintiffs' attorneys out there who are aware that you're supposed to have an SSMP in place. And they're starting to ask that question, do you have an SSMP? And you'll notice from the information that Brent shared with you, there's maybe 10, 15% of our members that, we don't know that they have an SSMP. Either they've told us they don't have it or they haven't responded. And if you're one of those members that don't have an SSMP in place, really, you need to get that in place. If you do have a claim, even if it's a no fault, but you get a plaintiff's attorney that knows, finds out you don't have an SSMP in place, that's just one other thing that they can, make the accusation that you're not being reasonable and prudent with.
Thanks, Doug. Sorry, Brent. Doug and I get a little passionate about sewer.
Oh, that's great. Great. You guys hit it right on the head. Great job.
We've been here a long time, and we've seen some pretty ugly things over the years. And so we're pretty passionate about this subject. So anyway, Brent, we'll give you the final word on that.
Yeah, that's our recommendations. And I know a lot of you already know that stuff, but we want to continue that. Make sure you're still doing your programs, that you have everything in place. And if there's anything else you learned that we can share, we'd love to hear it as well. So thanks for partnering with us. Have a great day.
Thanks, Brent. Awesome. Appreciate it, folks. Once again, we'll be posting this recording up on our YouTube channel today. You'll see it in just an hour or two, however long it takes to render. So thanks so much for supporting this and doing all of these things. We know it's work, but it pays off in the end. So thanks. Have a safe day.